Hi, I'm Amy, and today we're in the National Art Library to look at some of the smallest books in our collection, ranging from religious texts, dictionaries, texts for children, poetry. So we've picked out some of the most beautiful and fun ones to show you today. These books have quite an interesting story of how they've ended up in the library. They are from the collection of Queen Mary, consort to King George V between 1910 and 1936. She really loved miniature things. She commissioned various authors to create miniature books for her doll's house. And she loaned us these miniature books in December 1916 and then went on to loan some more. So it's really exciting to be able to show them to you today. So this is a very beautiful example of one of Queen Mary's books that are on loan to us. This is the Holy Bible, so Old Testament and New Testament. It's got beautiful red leather binding, some gilt effect on the cover, and around the pages too. An interesting thing about this is that at the time it was printed on the thinnest paper in existence, and this was published in 1896 by David Bryce and Son, who were a Glasgow-based publishing company. They were very famous and popular for their miniature titles, and you can see that inside here there's a signature from Mary, and it says 1896, so it seems like she got a copy of this as soon as it was published. So I'm not sure if this was ever actually read as a Bible, but it did fit in with Queen Mary's interest in miniature things. It's very beautiful, obviously, with these gold features, and it's in perfect condition, more or less. So you'll notice that I'm not wearing gloves for these objects. We don't wear gloves for paper-based objects such as books because we need the dexterity to be able to turn the pages properly, and you can't get that when you're wearing gloves. So if you thought this was quite small, this is even smaller. This is a copy of Robert Burns' poems, also from Queen Mary's collection, also published by David Bryce and Son. Again, it's very beautifully bound in lovely red leather, gold edges again, and also some marble end papers. Again, I'm not sure if this has ever been read as a book of poems, but it certainly shows the kind of difference in scale between the books that she wanted to collect. I'll open it up to some of the pages. You can see that the print in here is really tiny. At the time, publishers were very keen to show their craftsmanship and just how small they could make things. So you may think this might be the smallest one that we have, but it's actually not the smallest one in our collection, so stay tuned for even smaller examples. Queen Mary also had quite a lot of miniature dictionaries. This isn't one of hers, but it's the same edition, and this is one of our copies. As you can see, it's in a beautiful metal case. You'll notice that I've put on some gloves to hold this. With metal, we always wear gloves to protect the metal from the oils of our hands. Miniature books were often worn as necklaces or on girdles or as a talisman, so this might have been attached to a chain at some point. And inside the case is the smallest French and English dictionary. And the front part of the case has a magnifying glass. Something like this would have been quite useful if you were traveling, for example. You could keep this on your person and you could use it to check French-English words, and it would be a nice compact way of keeping that with you.
The book that we're going to look at now is the oldest one that we're going to show you today. Wait for the reveal. This is a really nice jewel-like book. It's bound in silver and lapis lazuli, which is an extremely expensive material, a semi-precious stone that would have had to come all the way from Afghanistan. This is enclosing a little prayer book. This book dates from the early 18th century, and you can see how, just from the outside, it really looks like a jewel. You see that even the edges of the book have been gilt, so it makes it look very shiny. The binding is so nicely worked. You've got 3 pieces of lapis lazuli on the spine, and it's such a lovely detail to notice that they're slightly irregular in shape, like the middle one is a little bit smaller to the other 2. And the front and back panels are both slightly cracked, but they have such a nice shine to them and such a deep blue. It's really amazing. In order to turn the pages, I will not use gloved hands. I will need just my fingers, my clean fingers. This is actually a manuscript prayer book, so it is handwritten. It's French and it's called Prières choisies, so chosen prayers. It's really very carefully calligraphed, so it's all done by hand, written on parchment with a little bit of color decoration, and it would have been used probably by a lady to say her prayers. This little book in a locket is actually a very different type of book to what we have looked at before. This is actually a miniature Qur'an. It also came out of David Bryce and Sons publishing house in Glasgow. It is really a lovely little thing. You can see signs of wear on the locket because when you open it, you will see that actually it would have been originally gilt. This shine has disappeared on the outside of the locket, but you still have it inside where it hasn't been rubbing against clothing or anything that come to affect the surface of the case. And it's got a lovely engraving on the back as well. A little Qur'an like this would have been really precious. It is documented as having been carried around by Muslim soldiers during the wars in the early 20th century. The idea of a prayer book or a religious text being carried around on a chain and kept with oneself conveys the idea of the book providing protection for the person who has this book on them. And it would have been easy for them then to look at certain passages using the little magnifying glass that is embedded in the locket. The text in this little book is on about 800 pages, printed on these very, very thin pages. And the way to achieve this edition was by producing it through a photolithographic process. So it means that actually David Bryce and Sons used an 1870s edition of the Qur'an to produce this little tiny edition. So yeah, in terms of technique, it is quite an interesting achievement.
All of these books here are all the same type of book. They are called almanacs. So almanacs are a kind of pre-printed diary. And in the 19th century, when publishing was taking off and miniature books were becoming more popular, almanacs were some of the most common miniature books that you would find. This is kind of a typical example of what they might look like. They've got these beautifully embossed gilt effect covers. So you can tell that they would be quite a fashionable accessory to have. People would have these and they keep them on their person, a bit like we might have a phone now to keep our dates and our important information on. So if we open that, so there's a lovely slip case. And this one I think is particularly beautiful. It's got a lovely blue effect on the leather and the gold edges of the paper and then the gold embossing on the cover. So if we open it up and have a look at what kind of thing you might find in an almanac, you can see there's some lovely plates of views around London. So this one is for the year 1871. And then you get into the real details. So they have the months of the year, information like time when the sun sets and the sun rises, saints' days, and other important information that you might need to know. And then in the back, there's also some things called transfer days at the bank. So you can tell that this is kind of the prototype internet, as it were. Like we would search online now to find information like that. So these were given out quite freely. You'd get a new one every year. So not a lot of them have survived. They've been thrown away, much like we would with like a diary that you've completed. So it's really nice that we have a set of them here to look back at. So this is another example of an almanac. It's got this beautiful kind of teal leather binding. And this one has a metal clasp on the front. So if I just open the clasp, and again, it folds out to traditional almanac. And in here, the real selling point, I think, would be the tiny pocket at the back. Probably be space for something like stamps. You can very much imagine going about town. You might keep it in your breast pocket for quick reference when you needed it. And over here we have an even smaller example of an almanac. This one is by Albert Schloss, a German printer. He was very famous for his almanacs. So this one is even tinier than any of the ones we saw previously. Just got a paper cover. It's quite Doesn't have the hard case that these do to protect them. An extremely small print. I mean, I'm not sure how much use this would be as a diary compared to the other ones, but it's certainly beautiful. And it has engravings by Romantic poet of the time, Letitia Elizabeth Landon. So she wrote some poetry for this and did some engravings. And it seems like she was quite fond of doing this thing. She once called it her fairy chronicle, fit for fairies in size. You can even see in here, there's a V&A stamp. So whenever they acquired this, some librarian had to go through and stamp this so we could make sure that they knew it was ours. This is a record of a particularly well-known famous event, especially to the V&A. It's of the 1851 Great Exhibition in Hyde Park. So in here, it's a tiny little book which has some engravings of various scenes from the exhibition. So you can see in here as well, it has the name of the person who bought it. M.B. Parkinson bought it in 1852. And it's a lovely little souvenir that you might pick up if you were visiting. You can imagine someone buying it and bringing it home and showing all their family. It's got some nice images of the different parts of the exhibition. This was published by Rock & Co., who are another famous miniature publisher of the time. There's not actually much text in here. There's just the labels of the scenes, and that's all it gives you. So it really is just a record of that particular event, but a very nice one. So we also have a lot of examples of children's miniature books in our collection. Here's a few of them. You can tell they're quite well loved by their condition. So these ones are from early 20th century, 1920, 1930. So this one is called The Happy Flower. It's got these little tie bindings, these lovely end papers with like a holly on them. And then inside tells the story of a girl trying to learn how to be kind and make friends. So you can imagine that this would be a gift that a small child might get at their birthday or Christmas. This one is called Teeny Weenie's Nursery Rhymes. So it's got a quite fitting name for the size. You'll notice that it's not that small compared to my hand. But for children, obviously, it would still be quite hefty. So this one has nursery rhymes inside with some little black and white illustrations. Very cute. And you can tell that this has been very well loved by the condition. And it's also got the previous owner's name on the front. So this is quite an earlier example of a children's miniature book. This is by Kate Greenaway. She was a famous illustrator of the time, of the 1880s, and you can see that this is a nice little compact volume of the alphabet. And she was very famous for her particular style of illustration, children looking very idyllic and charming. So it was very popular at the time.
I've got some little items here which are not technically speaking miniature books. They're what we call paper peep shows, also called tunnel books in the United States. Paper peep shows were really fashionable and very popular from the early 19th century onwards. You would have a front panel and then some cutout panels and a back panel, and it would open out like an accordion, if you like, creating this illusion of depth and of unfolding the view before your eyes. They were primarily used as like souvenirs, like for instance, documenting the Great Exhibition of 1851 or exciting technological feats such as railways that opened in the 19th century, and it could also document famous cities or famous buildings. We have many examples of that kind in a collection that came to us in 2016, the Jacqueline and Jonathan Gestetner collection, which was gifted to us as part of this collection that we got this really little paper peep show. I think it's the smallest one in the collection. It's an Italian paper peep show from around 1900, probably belonged to a child. It's decorated on the outside with views of like the River Rhine, but also there is a little boy dressed probably in 18th century dress with an inscription that says l'onomastico. So l'onomastico in Italian means the name day. This refers to a little celebration that still happens today for kids who are celebrated on their name day or their patron saint's day. So this is a handmade paper peep show, and so you will see that It's really quite small compared to other ones that we have. And the bellows are quite intricate. And the theme of the name day is still in keeping with the view that you get when you look through the peephole, which shows you kids being gathered for a little celebration. And so it's got very colorful cutout of kids dancing and celebrating. And when it's completely collapsed, it looks like this crowded room full of children. So some existing prints have been used to make this. They've been cut out along the lines of the little figures and arranged so that they wouldn't obstruct too much the view as you look down. So in the early 19th century, paper peep shows are very popular with everyone. In the later 19th century and around 1900, it's more direct to children. And so this is quite typical of the kind of thing that children would have played with at this time. And then in the 20th and 21st century, you get artists taking up the format of the paper peep show to experiment and to make types of artist books. So this is what we have here. This is a kind of double paper peep show. You see, it looks like a little mini library with 2 books in a slipcase, but actually when you look at these books, they're not books, they're peep shows. These 2 little paper peep shows were done around the theme of Alice in Wonderland by an artist called Marilyn Poole Adams. She's American. She specializes in miniature books, and so she's really interested in working on this scale. And so one of the paper peep shows is called Through the Looking Glass, and the other one is called Alice in Wonderland. When we open them up, we have a mixture of a little booklet that is an extract, in this case, from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. So we find the text printed in this little booklet. And then on the right-hand side, we have the peep show proper. So this is what it looks like when it's fully extended. And then you just look through the peephole in order to have the view. And you will see different episodes in Alice's adventures when you look through. And the other one is pretty much the same idea. And we have, again, like episodes of Alice's adventures. When we look through, we can see all the way at the back panel where we see the Queen and the King and Alice in a garden. These are really lovingly made. And this is a limited edition, as you can imagine. So this is an edition of 100, and we've got number 18. I think these are probably the smallest examples of peep shows that we have in the collection. And they fit back nicely into a little slipcase.
So if you think you've seen tiny books so far, this is really something else. So the book we have here is actually titled The Smallest Book in the World. So I'll open it up for you and you can see, or not see, as it were. So this is what you would call a macro miniature. It does look like I'm proposing now. Would you like to marry this book? It's 2.4 by 2.9 millimeters. So it's obviously something I would not be able to safely handle without worrying of damaging it. So it's just in this lovely display case, situated in the middle under a magnifying glass. So this was created in 2002 by German typographer Joshua Reichert. It was made in the German city of Leipzig, and we have one of the only copies. And it's a great example of the form, a kind of miniature book that's more of a statement of craftsmanship and how much we can push the limits of size, really. If you take the magnifying glass off, you can't really see anything about it. It comes with this leaflet, thankfully, which can show us what it would look like if we were to open it. You can see the letters as they would look if you could see it with your naked eye. This book is particularly interesting because it brings into question the whole topic of miniature things anyway. If it's so small, can it really be counted as a book if you can't read it? At what point does the size of the book really have an impact on what it's trying to tell you? So I have seen a video of someone looking at a copy of this under a microscope where you're able to open the book and look at the pages. Sadly, we can't do that now, but it's nice to know what is in there. I think one of the most fascinating things about this kind of format of book for me is that it really makes you reconsider what a book is. How small is too small to read? What impact does the size and the format of a book have on what you get out of its contents? Is it a book if you cannot read it? Let us know what you think in the comments.